Now 1:08 p.m. The State Board of Education is returning to open session, and a quorum of the board is present. The regular meeting of the State Board of Education is reconvened. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who would like to address the board during today's meeting?
There are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limit so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Please finish your sentence and end your comment when the timer goes off. Thank you for your cooperation. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people. Any person disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. Public participation will occur in person and virtually. We will begin with those persons that are physically in the room with us today and then move to the queue online. First person in the room today is Stephanie Jones. Thank you. You can have a seat, and whenever you're comfortable, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie L. Jones. I have an amazing 12-year-old son, Robert, who was diagnosed with severe autism at 2 years old. He is nonverbal. He has no sense of danger, water, fire, or even a Mack truck coming at full speed. 2 years ago, while I prepared his bag for summer camp, Robert went out the screen window. We live on one of the busiest roads in our city, across from a major park. He had stripped completely naked and was running around the yard playing with his ball, while everyone stared. Last summer, I received a frantic call from my friend who lives a block away. "Francis is gone," she yelled. "He's gone, he's gone." I quickly drove to her house. "Did you call the police?" No. She was standing in her driveway in shock. I drove off to search for Francis. I called 911. What does he look like? My description? About 4 feet tall, mousy blonde hair, I think brown eyes. They found Francis about 6 blocks away, almost an hour later. Some of you may be aware that approximately 1 month ago, police were called to a home in Idaho. They didn't know the knife-wielding teen had autism, and in 22 seconds, they shot him 9 times. He died 48 hours later. I read so many comments of parents online, "I will never call the police. They don't understand our children." When my son went out that window, it just so happened an officer was called to my neighbor's home. Familiar with autism symptoms, he came to me and asked if I would consider registering my son with the department in case he ever eloped. He hugged me as I told him about the window incident. The form is basic: his physical description, what triggers him, talking, what calms him, the bubble guppies and Anita Baker. They have a photo that I update as needed. I want to play this quickly for you. No. Robert, hey, stop. Come on, come back. Stop. Let me go.
That concludes your 3 minutes, ma'am. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what was wrong with my son just a few days ago, but I do know that he will soon tower over 6 feet tall. But I do feel safe knowing that if the police are ever called to my home, the dispatchers are able to say to them, Officers, we have a teen or young adult registered with autism on site. Please be aware. Today, I am asking you, the board members, I am pleading with you to consider passing the resolution for our police departments to have an optional registration system so that we as parents and family members will feel safe if our kids ever eloped or if they are ever called to our homes for any reason. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go off and grab my son off the bus. I won't be here for your vote, but thank you.
Next in the room with us today is Heather Eckner. And as she's approaching the table, you've already received a packet at the top says Autism Alliance, and so that is from her.
Good afternoon, board members, superintendent, and department staff. I'm Heather Eckner. I serve as the statewide director of education for the Autism Alliance of Michigan. And I'm here again this month to address the critical issue of Michigan's continued over-reliance on the use of alternate assessment, also known as My Access, and its detrimental impact on students with disabilities. The U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education has now denied Michigan's waiver request to exceed the 1% cap on alternate assessment participation for the third consecutive year, which includes this 24-25 school year, citing insufficient progress in reducing participation rates and also a failure to meet the 95% assessment requirement for students with disabilities in the science assessment. Michigan's current participation rate in the My Access significantly exceeds the federal cap. In the 22-23 school year, approximately 1.8% of students, so 1% is the cap, 1.8%, almost double the number of students participated in the alternate assessment. This overrepresentation suggests that many students with disabilities are being assigned to the alternate assessment without adequate justification, potentially leading to long-term educational disadvantages. The consequences of this over-reliance are profound. Students placed in the My Access are often denied the opportunity to earn a regular high school diploma, receiving instead a certificate of completion. This credential, the certificate, is not recognized as equivalent to a high school diploma and can be severely limiting to post-secondary educational and employment opportunities. The state's graduation rate for students with disabilities is among the lowest in the nation, with 61% earning on-time regular high school diplomas. Those are kids with IEPs, compared to 80% of non-disabled peers. That's a 25 percentage point gap. We are aware, the Autism Alliance, of the department's proposed plan to examine the 3 tiers of the My Access. However, to address these issues, the Autism Alliance asks the Michigan Department of Education to take urgent action and calls for the immediate withdrawal of the functional independence tier of the My Access. There's 3 tiers, removal of the functional independence tier, because this tier disproportionately includes students who may not meet the criteria for alternate assessment, leading to these unnecessary educational segregation. We also call for the department to provide regular briefings to the State Board of Education on the ongoing monitoring calls with the Office of Special Education Programs, OSEP. This was part of the denial letters, these ongoing monitoring calls. We'd like for you all to receive updates that include the data on participation rates, progress towards meeting the 1% cap, and strategies for reducing over-reliance on the alternate assessment. The continued overuse of the My Access violates federal guidelines and perpetuates inequalities in educational outcomes for students with disabilities. Thank you for your attention to this urgent matter.
Thank you. Next in the room is Ann Tapjaska. Or excuse me, Jaxa. Yes, I apologize. And whenever you're ready, you may have a seat and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you. So my name is Ann Tapjaxa, and I am a professor of teacher education at Saginaw Valley State University. And I was fortunate to be a member of the committee for the standards for the profession and preparation of special education teachers. So I would like to take a moment to commend the Michigan Department of Education Office of Educator Excellence, and Office of Special Education for the process by which the proposed special ed teacher preparation standards were created. So multiple stakeholders were involved in this process, including parents, P-12 educators, and those of us from higher education. Research was considered, best practice was considered, national standards were considered. As the current chair of the Board of Directors for the American Association for Colleges for Teacher Education and looking at the national landscape, it's very assuring that the Michigan Department of Education is laser focused on what our Michigan children need. These standards will help us to assure that our Michigan children will receive the best education informed by local, state, and national best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person today is Beth Kubitsky. Hopefully I got that close.
Perfect, and it's my husband's fault.
Whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Beth Kubitsky, and I'm here to represent the Michigan Association for Colleges of Teacher Education. And I'm quickly going to just echo Dr. Ann Jacka's, particularly about the process, and thank the Michigan Department of Education for the opportunity for educator preparation programs to be involved in this standards process. And this working with our PK-12 partners and the community and the parents. And this process allows us to be involved with the success and actually hear the voices of the PK schools and parents and community partners. This helps us be better at what we do. And I think it's important to draw attention to the Office of Educator Excellence and the people in there that work with us. And I just thought this would be an important opportunity to share. So thank you very much to the Michigan Department of Education and the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Stewart. And as he's approaching, there's also a packet on the longer sheets of paper are from him today, so.
Don't start the clock yet. 10 years ago, I drove to the Kalamazoo Public School Board meeting on a Thursday night when we named Michael Rice Superintendent of the Year.
All right. Whenever you're ready to begin, you may.
Thank you very much. I was known as the education guy and chair of higher education for 6 years on the Appropriations Committee when I was a state legislator. Forgive me, but I'm the only state legislator who's given 4 major commencement addresses in the last 40 years. I had a very close relationship with Governor Milliken, Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, Oakland University, and Lake Superior State. I am calling for a statewide education summit to be hosted in Plymouth Canton. We want to honor and support Michael Rice. I have coffee in Northville with a couple gentlemen named Tom Watkins and Mike Flanagan. Education in Michigan is a mosaic now. Homeschool, charter schools, private schools, public education, which still educate more than 90% of all students. Wayne County RESA and MDE have professional staff ready to assist and to help the people. But we still have 60,000 unaccounted for students. Michigan's children who have not registered with the 4th floor of MDE. We have 30,000 homeless children, mostly in Detroit and Wayne County. I'm the only Republican or Democrat who's going to stand in front of you and say, we have to acknowledge those numbers of 60,000 unaccounted for, unregistered, and 30,000 homeless. Last fall, Ellen Lipton, Harvard Magazine, September, Science of Reading, Laura Stewart, my daughter. And even this past Friday morning at a breakfast in Kalamazoo, I hear my Senator Eric Nesbitt talking about science of reading. That's only one program. It hurts me deeply when my friend, chairman of the journalism department at Wayne State, Jack Lessenberry, says people aren't reading books. People aren't reading, period. The knowledge gap. My daughter makes me listen to podcasts. My daughter has me reading to how leaders can inspire accountability. And then she's telling me that these books and these science of reading are from U of M and Michigan State professors. If you grant me the privilege of hosting you for a meeting in the largest public high school campus in the United States, Plymouth and Canton, I will assure you that Carol Kane of CBS will be the masters of ceremony. She has offered to me, my friend Carol Kane, Chandra Matafari, Dan Quisenberry, Mike Flanagan, Tom Watkins, and Isabel Lohman of Bridge Magazine has confirmed with me that she will cover
For your
this
3
summit.
minutes.
So I hope you will consider my invite, and I hope we can say that we were blessed with the leadership and go onward and forward, even if you don't do it until after October and there's an interim superintendent. But thank you for your work, and I appreciate one final comment. Alessandra listened to me, and she communicated with Dr. Rice. We need to go onward and forward, folks, but we're at a critical point right now.
Sir. Next in the room is Vanessa Kiesler. And whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, members of the State Board, Superintendent Rice, Department. I'm here again as promised. I'm not actually going to talk about the grants clock today at all. I think we're down to just maybe 2 or 3. I was trying to track them down. I'll give somebody here a call and make sure that my record keeping is up to date. But I wanted to take a moment, take the time instead to share with all of you and with everybody listening a recent report released by Launch Michigan about strengthening the educator pipeline. In October, Senator Camilleri asked Launch to review the state's over $1 billion of investments in the educator talent pipeline and make recommendations regarding future investments and policy. So we convened an educator roundtable that included providers who are receiving funds under some of the state investments, members of the MDE, thank you team who was able to come be part of that, MyLeap, researchers, just a number of people who are part of the educator ecosystem here in Michigan, educator talent ecosystem. And we looked at all those investments that have come since FY23 to FY25. And you have both the one pager and the full report. So I would say our 3 biggest takeaways are, one, Michigan needs to continue addressing its educator shortage. And also more of our investments are on recruitment and fewer are on retention. And so while we had a desperate need to get people in the classroom, and that still is a need, particularly in high need areas, we should in the future ask, how do we help keep them there once we get them? How do we help support educators? I see Kelly nodding emphatically about that. And then 2, if we want to really understand how these investments are going, and I know this is a tough thing to say in a time of potential constrained resources, but if we really want to understand how the investments are going, we do need the state to invest in the research, to require the data collection, and to support capacity here at the department to do that. So I feel like it's common for people to say, well, what do we know about the ROI, or what do we know about what really happened? Sometimes you can't really tell what really happened if you don't have the right data or the right resources. So if we want to sustain our investments and make sure they're targeted, we should invest in the research to go along with it. Focus on retention, target high needs areas. Kind of aligned with the grants clock, making spending easier. That was a key thing that we saw in talking to the districts at the roundtable and the providers, that how the legislators appropriate the funds and the ability to blend and braid them and draw them down and when they're due, and all of that adds to the complication. And so making sure that future investments take that into account. And then continue the statewide conversation. I would say that was the other main thing that came out of the roundtable is people said, wow, we don't usually all sit at the same table together, and it's really critical to continue this. So Launch hopes to have another round of this shortly, focusing on that retention question, and we look forward to continued partnership with all of you at this table, at the department, and in the field. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last person in the room today is Eric Hopstock. Whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, state board members. Good afternoon, state superintendent. Good to see you in person. My name is Eric Hopstock, currently superintendent at the Berrien Regional Education Service Agency in Berrien Springs. I'm here to speak on the special ed teacher education standard, prep standards. There's a statement that says, start with the end in mind. So if you open the IDA federal regulations, it says purpose of this part, and it is to ensure a free, appropriate public education so that the unique needs of those students we serve are met, and they are prepared for 3 things: further education, employment, and independent living. That is an enabling statement. It's not a disabling statement. We also know and have always known in education that that is achievable through great instruction, and great instruction is delivered by teachers. They make it exciting, they make it engaging, they make it equitable. So you have to have good standards so that you prepare good teachers to provide good instruction so that we can enable students with disabilities to achieve at high levels. These preparation standards are a launch forward. I would hire any one of these prepared teachers in a second. It represents our current thinking. It represents some of the newest thinking relative to preparing teachers. It is my hope someday this becomes the base from which all teachers for students with disabilities are prepared. There is additional specialization that is needed for sure, but this is a quality teacher that will provide a quality education for the students that need it the most. So I thank you for approving these standards in a little bit. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Mike, are there any persons online who have pre-registered for public comment today?
No one has joined us today.
Thank you so much. This concludes public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Thank you, Mr. Flaminio. Thank you, public comment presenters. Board at 1:30, the next item on today's agenda is the approval of the proposed standards for the preparation of special education teachers. This proposal is presented to the State Board of Education for the adoption of new standards, the presentation of special ed teachers in grades K through 12. This presentation is a follow-up to January 2025 of the proposed standards, to share the results of public comment, and to seek the board's approval. We welcome or re-welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, back by popular demand, Deputy Superintendent in the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law. Ms. Kelly Brozanski, Director in the Office of Educator Excellence. Dr. Gina Garner, Higher Education Consultant in the Office of Educator Excellence. Ms. Mary Araujo.
Yes.
Lead Resource Program Teacher, Detroit Public Schools Community District, and Dr. Valencia Cade, Supervisor of Special Education in Thorndale Public Schools. This is an informational presentation, but there will be board action subsequent to the presentation. Presenters, welcome.
Go ahead, you start the. Yep. Thank you, very good. Move this mic forward. Thank you. Good afternoon, board. We're happy to share with you the standards that were presented to you earlier in this school year, and then we went out for public comment. Now we're bringing them back to you. The standards fit our first goal, which is, or goal 7 rather, increasing the number of certified teachers in area of shortage. And Gina Garner is going to lead us through the presentation. Yeah, right here where it says forward. Oh, not moving. Right, I'll do that. Okay, do it that way.
And then forward, here we go.
All right, so goal 7 is operationalized as increasing the quantity, quality, and diversity of our teacher workforce. Today, we are going to share the work that builds on the existing progress around quality. So previously, we came and presented the professional knowledge and skills standards, which strengthen the quality of preparation for all new teachers, regardless of the content area, to support the needs of diverse learners, and allowing special education teachers to focus on providing support for specialized instruction and increased access to the general education environment. These standards will work in tandem, improving the overall system of education for all learners, and will focus on increasing the quantity and quality of special educators in Michigan through this new option for special education teacher endorsement. Through this option, we also hope to increase the quantity of students to be served and the quality of those students by increasing the number of special educators. And Gina will tell us how we got here.
Work to build the standards for a new special education teacher endorsement was informed by prior committee work completed by Optimize, a task force created by Section 94D of the State School Aid Act. This group was charged with developing a comprehensive multi-year plan to attract, prepare, and retain qualified personnel for children with disabilities through forming a coalition of partners from across the state. The Teacher Credentialing and Standards Subgroup recommended offering a standalone special education endorsement that could allow a special educator to be placed in programs for students across multiple eligibility areas. This allows for more focused and specific coursework with the entire preparation program focused on special education pedagogy. In August of 2023, a committee of stakeholders representing a wide range of individuals connected to special education in Michigan was convened to begin the work of creating a new special education teacher endorsement. In March, the standards writing team worked until the summer of 2024. In March, the initial draft of the proposed standards was sent to critical partners in the K-12 and higher education communities for targeted feedback. That feedback was reviewed in the summer of 2024, and revisions to the standards were completed as a result. 25 individuals participated in the standards writing team. 13 individuals participated in targeted feedback for the standards writing team. These individuals represented multiple perspectives of special education across the state. They included special educators, parents of students with disabilities, intermediate school district and district level administrators, higher education faculty from special education preparation programs, and Michigan Department of Education staff from the Office of Special Education and the Office of Educator Excellence. The standards writing team aligned the new standards to the Council for Exceptional Children's initial practice-based professional preparation standards for special educators. CEC's standards are organized around 5 domains or broad categories of teacher knowledge and skills as listed on this slide. The team reviewed CEC standards and domains and then determined if additional standards were needed under each domain. As a result, the team retained CEC's domains and added or removed standards within them based on Michigan's needs for special education preparation. These proposed standards create opportunities across preparation, the K-12 education system, and Michigan as a whole. With these standards, preparation programs for special educators can be strengthened to emphasize how to support students' access to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Expand student access to general education through skill development and through enacting high leverage teaching practices, provide cross-cutting instructional skills to support students with a wide range of needs. We hope to increase the capacity of our educational system to serve students with disabilities because of the increased flexibility this proposed endorsement offers to both teachers and districts. The revised certification system includes professional knowledge and skill standards that prepare all teachers, regardless of their content or grade level, to provide learner-centered instruction that meets the needs of a wide range of students. This allows the special educator time to focus on providing explicit support and intervention for students in special education programs. An added standalone special education endorsement option will address the demand for special education teachers in Michigan. It is expected to increase the number of individuals seeking to become special education teachers and to attract special education teachers prepared in other states by easing reciprocity with credentials available in other states. We are asking you to approve these preparation standards so that our offices can begin the work of implementation that includes a new special education teacher endorsement. This new special education teacher endorsement will be an addition to the currently available special education endorsements. No special education endorsements will be removed as a result of this new endorsement addition. All currently certified special educators will continue to hold their special education endorsements on their certificates. This is an additional option for prospective teachers. There are no subtractions. These standards will inform preparation programs that wish to recommend teachers for the new special education teacher endorsement. This will be a standalone endorsement that does not require the addition of a general education endorsement. However, a teacher can easily add a general education endorsement to their certificate by completing a program and additional clinical hours and completing the MTTC. Key shifts for this new endorsement include the ability for an individual to earn this endorsement as a standalone endorsement on a Michigan teaching certificate. They can also add general education endorsements or additional special education endorsements if desired. Another key shift is an increased focus within preparation programs on providing academic intervention and support across all content areas, with an emphasis on literacy and mathematics development. Current special educators only choose one content area of focus. Our goal is for these special educators to have that ability to support content across all content areas, allowing them to fully support students in the general education environment. A final shift includes greater flexibility in special educator placement. Current special educators must be placed according to their special education endorsement. The new special education teacher endorsement would have the flexibility of being assigned across several special education programs, meeting a wider range of student needs. A teacher with this new proposed endorsement may be placed in cognitive impairment, emotional impairment, specific learning disability, physical impairment or other health impairment programs, and in resource rooms. This is inclusive of all levels of cognitive impairment programs. Some programs are excluded as a placement option for individuals who will hold this endorsement due to the specialized communication and developmental training and the clinical experience required to serve students in these programs. A teacher with this new endorsement may not be placed in autism spectrum disorder programs without a permit or special education approval. They may also not be placed in early childhood special education, deaf and hard of hearing, or visual impairment programs, or provide services for adapted physical education or speech and language impairment. Public comment was collected between January 16th and February 27th. That's mostly my page. My apologies, they're sticky. Here we go, got it, sorry. 128 individuals participated in the public comment survey. They represented 31 counties and 43 districts or ISDs across Michigan, as depicted on this map. 5 respondents were affiliated with colleges or universities in Michigan, and respondents represented 23 different professional education organizations. Participants in public comment had the opportunity to note their roles or perspectives. Our largest group of participants were administrators, with 48 individuals represented. Parents and guardians and K-12 special educators were the second and third largest group, with 36 participants each. 80% of survey participants indicated they supported the proposed standards. 81% of participants indicated these standards support K-12 learners' enrichment and creative growth. 84% of participants indicated these standards support achievement of Michigan's academic standards for K-12 learners. 85% of respondents indicated that the standards aligned with the Council for Exceptional Children's initial standards for special educators. Additionally, we received a number of comments from survey participants. 63 respondents left at least one comment, resulting in 128 comments total. 65% of all comments were supportive of the standards, but the remaining comments were not necessarily unsupportive. Many comments provided feedback directly to the stakeholder group to strengthen the standards. Only 2 of our comments were purely negative. Comments were reviewed and analyzed by MDE staff and the Standards Committee. 6 clear themes emerged from this analysis. Support for the flexibilities and for a sole special education endorsement were a strong theme in public comment. Support to apply the standards to all special education preparation and to add the autism spectrum disorder to the list of where a teacher prepared with these standards can teach were also expressed. Additionally, comments discussed changes to the administrative rules for special education and challenges happening around special educator placement within the current K-12 system. Support for these standards often discussed the flexibility the new endorsement will provide and how these standards will strengthen special educator preparation. Some comments indicated a desire for teachers with this special education endorsement to be able to support students in placements for autism spectrum disorder. Some comments indicated they would like to see all special educators, regardless of endorsement, to be prepared with these standards. Some commenters indicated concerns about how these new standards will be implemented, noting the challenges of endorsement programs that include both special and general education. Others noted that these teachers would not have deep content knowledge of all the K-12 content areas. These special educators are prepared to support students in general education, not teach the actual general education content. Content should be taught by teachers who have been prepared and endorsed in that content. Special educators support students' access to content and their general education teachers' instructions. After reviewing public comment feedback, the Standards Committee had 3 primary responses for the department to consider. Number 1, they recommend requiring these standards as a base set for all standards for all special education preparation programs. Number 2, they also recommend allowing teachers with this endorsement to also provide support in placement serving students with autism spectrum disorder. And 3, they provided an affirmation that these teachers are supporting core content, not teaching core content, unless they also possess that core content endorsement. Teachers with this new endorsement should be prepared to support the majority of students with special education needs. MDE affirms that third response that content should be taught by endorsed teachers. MDE will also consider the committee's first 2 recommendations while determining potential revisions for the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education. The committee reviewed all comments suggesting revisions to the standards. Many suggestions were already addressed by the standards and did not require changes. Based on the comments, the committee did see 4 areas that could be strengthened. This resulted in the revision of 2 standards to provide clarity and 2 others to provide emphasis. And Valencia is going to talk about our next slide. Thank you. Yes.
So in
2.3, I believe we went a little bit deeper based on the comments that we received, and we revised that particular standard to clearly discuss the impact and link between assessment procedures and how that affects a student's trajectory to high school completion, connecting the continuum of IEP decisions made in elementary grades to the outcomes expected at the high school level. In component 5.6, we revised it to connect specially designed instruction to the needs outlined in the student's IEP. Several of our commenters provided feedback about the link from the IEP goals and needs to specially designed instruction that helps students meet those IEP goals.
And then Mary also has another set of changes for us.
Yes, component 1.2 was revised from feedback to address and really emphasize why we need our special educators to identify and challenge personal and systemic biases that have the potential to directly affect a student's mental well-being. Preparing teachers to advocate for their students within the general education system is critical for teacher and student success. Likewise, component 6.2 was revised after feedback indicated that anticipation and de-escalation of behavior is critical to supporting student educational and behavioral growth.
Next, implementation steps following the State Board of Education's approval of these standards are determining if the development of additional rules for the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education to include the new special education teacher endorsement is needed. This is anticipated to take approximately 18 to 24 months. Developing a teacher Michigan test for teacher certification aligned to these new standards for teachers completing these new programs. This is anticipated to take approximately 3 years. Creating and implementing technical assistance to our higher education partners that wish to offer this new endorsement and to our K-12 partners to inform them about the new option for special education certification. It is anticipated that, if approved, teachers would begin to emerge from these programs with the new endorsement in the 2028-2029 academic year. Preparation providers may begin applying to offer this new endorsement program once it is approved in April of 2026, allowing for the first potential cohorts to begin programs in fall 2026, and as mentioned, first teachers entering the field by spring 2028. Thank you for your time, and are there any questions?
Thank you, presenters. That was a rich tour of a very, very important and complicated piece of work. Board members, questions or comments? Questions or comments? Ms. Snyder.
I'm just going to be open and honest about not supporting these standards. You know, when Public Act 451 was put into place with MARS rules, I believe that they were designed and intended to make sure that special education teachers are prepared to teach, you know, the specialty of what they're doing, right? And I think when we come to the table and we reverse that and we say that a special education endorsement as opposed to a CI, EI, ASD endorsement is something that is acceptable to provide these services to students, and we undo that work, that historical work that was very positive, that was what we should be working towards, then we are in fact not actually writing standards that achieve that act, what we've tried to do since 1972. We have ITC, interim teaching certificates, right? We've had those since 2020. If we thought that pulling back away from those specialized endorsements was the right move and that it would encourage special education teachers to pursue those endorsements and improve our special education in Michigan, then we would have seen an increase, right? But we haven't seen an increase. So then I would say that the goal is to sit down and speak with special education teachers. 36 is just too low of a number to say this is the best thing to do. Remove endorsements and do a blanket endorsement. And then when you look at mild to moderate, the concept of mild to moderate is constantly redefinable. We have parents coming to the table consistently saying my child isn't in the right classroom or they aren't getting the services that they need. And so our response is to just do a blanket special education new endorsement and pull back from those specialized endorsements and say those 3 to 4 courses or that clinical experience isn't necessary. I would argue that's exactly what's necessary to improve special education in Michigan, is to keep our endorsements. If you had to have spine surgery tomorrow, would you want the doctor that specializes in tumors or the doctor that specializes in realignment? You would want to go to the specialized physician that has done that certification in that area and is going to do the best by you. We want that for our parents. We want that for our special education students. And so while this may be the direction that MDE is going in, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best direction, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to improve special education in Michigan.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Other board members? Please.
So there were some negative comments. What did those focus on? Not negative, but also ones, there was more than just negative. There was also one that said would support with significant revisions, and I'm assuming those significant revisions weren't made.
Those significant, generally the ones that were support with significant revisions, those were all given to the committee to review. Interestingly enough, often those comments identified a specific piece, but it wasn't an enormous piece. And all of those that provided some kind of, we need this, we want to see this isn't worded right, this committee looked at those and made revisions where needed. A lot of times, the committee was able to say, that is actually represented in this statement or in this standard, and maybe the person had missed. Sometimes it was in a different standard domain than another. So the committee did look at all of those support with minor revisions, support with significant, and addressed every one of those. The 2 primarily negative ones were not about the standards at all, but were really commenting about current state of special education.
Okay. And just so I apologize, maybe I don't know this as well as I should, but the impetus for doing this, I mean, it's very hard to get, I mean, we're having a hard time getting special ed teachers, right? Isn't that currently, districts are having a very difficult time getting special ed teachers? I mean,
historically.
Right. And so this will allow, this will ease that burden. Is that by having this, it's thought that it's going to address that difficulty, isn't it?
That's one area.
I'm not saying it's the only, but I'm just saying that is something that it likely will occur because of these standards.
That's one area we hope will improve. The other thing to think about with this particular endorsement, what we've learned over the years is there are evidence-based practices that support students for learning. And if you look at different categories of student eligibility and you say, what is the best practice in a particular area of eligibility, you'll see common themes across those eligibility areas. That's what the high leverage practices are that are cross-cutting. So a student with a learning disability, an emotional impairment, would benefit from the same types of instructional strategies. That's a big change in this compared to what we had in the past.
May not be able to get any, I mean, or maybe one. They'll probably, this will open the pool up eventually so that they may be able to get 1 or 2.
Yes, that's true.
Also add that a lot of classrooms now are not, like if you're looking at a ASD classroom, you're going to have students in there that are cross-categorical. If you're in a CI classroom, you're going to have kids in there that are EI, so having a classroom with a person that just has that knowledge of that particular endorsement area is not really reflective of what the average classroom is going to look at. I was a former EI self-contained teacher, and I had moderately cognitively impaired students in my class. And so I believe that these standards, which will teach those cross-categorical kind of skills that all teachers, regardless of what endorsement you have, need to have to be able to support the various needs of students that are in front of you. I believe that there is benefit in having a program like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McMillan, Dr. Cade. Other board members, other reflections?
Thank you for the presentation. I definitely understand from a classroom management aspect of needing to make it more accessible and to get more teachers and staff into the field. But I wanted to hear from Judy and from Kelly, who has a higher level of experience than I do, your reflections, if that's okay.
I So as I've gone around Michigan and like I've talked about, when I go to smaller districts, it's really hard to hire in specialized areas. And that to me is a big benefit. I know when I co-taught for years, the person who I co-taught with had an EI endorsement, but she was more support for learning disabilities as well. Like her EI knowledge came in emotional impairment. Sorry, I'm going into my like teacher jargon, but I was able to work with her on a variety of things. I think what happens with special education is when you get too specialized, you choke off the pipeline because, and I've thought about this with certification too, like when you specialize too much in education, there's a lot of schools that you're a jack of all trades and you have to be in those smaller areas. And I think that that's really important. The more we can increase access for kids, the better. So that's what I personally think. And I also think, yes, there always should be more teacher voice, but all of you are experts in the field and experts in this area. And I know Valencia through my twin, and I know she's an expert in this space. And so I really defer like I always do because special education teachers are the magic. So thank you for your work.
I certainly concur with Kelly. And again, what does happen in classrooms is that we do have a lot of cross-categoricals. I can remember sitting in IEPs with parents and staff, and we trying to determine what's the best placement for the child. But not only that, where are they going to benefit the most? What, what staff do we have available to us at this point? And to be able to have an individual who could meet the needs of maybe more than one category at this point would certainly be helpful. Obviously, if a child is on the severe end of any spectrum, be it cognitively impaired, autistically impaired, emotionally impaired, we're going to try to focus on, let's get the expert in there. Let's get the individual working with that child who has the endorsement, who has had extra classes in this, who may have different strategies. But the other thing is the students need to have the experiences of life also. Because once they walk out that classroom door or that school door, they have to learn how to deal with all sorts of people, and being able to possibly start that and do that within their own classroom with a certified teacher who is aware of the different disabilities, I think is a positive. Again, not at one end of the spectrum, but those students who primarily fit into that. So again, I commend you for taking the step. There will be times when that will have to be adjusted in a local school district, and that comes with the territory. That happens all the time. We know that as school districts have to look at their staffing.
And that is exactly why we maintained all of the endorsement areas.
Mhm.
So there are still those deep specializations
Right.
that allow people to work more intensively with students who need that additional support.
I was gonna ask about that. Would those programs still be available? So that's good to know. And then I wanted to add the reciprocity piece. That's gonna be big too. I have multiple siblings that are educators that no longer live in Michigan. I think a lot of people would want to come to Michigan or come back to Michigan. if it was easier to come back and teach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley, Ms. Cusmano, Dr. Pritchett, Garner, Dr. Cade.
Got one more.
Takes a village. Mr. McMillan.
Just one more, on 1.2, what kind of systemic and personal, okay, identify and challenge systemic and personal biases. And then it says, not limited to, includes but not limited to special education evaluation process within instructional placement and behavioral practices. So what exactly would be an example of systemic or personal biases that may marginalize or cause stress or harm to the students?
An example of that would be a student coming in who is expressing themselves in different ways or behaviorally have different pieces. They're a kid in school, but they kind of appear a little different. And what we want teachers to be able to do is look at that student for who they are, what they can do, what they present to that classroom, instead of automatically taking their own ideas about people and placing them on the student. So what we teach special educators to do is to set their own, anything they come to that table with, kind of describing people, and put all of that aside when they look at an individual student and really look at what that student needs and who that student is. So it's really about focusing on the person in front of you and making sure you're seeing that human for who they are.
Thank you. You still have the floor. No more questions? All right, very good. Other questions by other board members? Other questions? Dr. Harmala, remind us, you're a special education teacher initially by training?
I am.
Okay. And how long have you been in public education?
Oh, do I really have to answer that question? Let's just say I graduated from high school before 1983. How's that sound?
As did I. Thank you very much for sharing that. And your career continued. It wasn't. It was special education teacher. Then you continued up the ranks for many years in special education, including assistant superintendent 4, associate superintendent 4, and.
Yep.
Okay, very good. I was just wanted to make sure.
And in higher ed for 6 years, running and teaching in special ed programs.
What you said.
What I said.
Please.
I just wanted to add, when you're in the classroom with students, you could have, and it depends, of course, every district is different, but you can have multiple students in the classroom that are special needs, and it's going to show up different in each child. So it's really still the educator learning that student and learning their particular needs. Thank you.
And Ms. Araujo Pedrosa, how long have you been a special education teacher?
I've been teaching for 32 years.
Okay.
So, special education, about 17, I think,
All
or
right.
18 years, half the time.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And Dr. Cade, how about you?
I'll take it if you're talking about me. I'll claim that doctor first. I'm claiming it. It's just Valencia.
Okay, all right,
But I'm
very
claiming,
good.
that's the next step. So this is confirmation.
I should not get ahead of myself. You apparently haven't, so I shouldn't. Okay.
No, it is definitely on the radar. So,
Okay.
so I've been in education for like 24 years now. I was a gen ed teacher, special ed teacher. I've taught elementary, middle, and high school, both gen ed and special ed, alternative ed, and so been a teacher consultant and now a special ed supervisor for 3 years. So.
Very good, thank you. We appreciate all of our educators and their experiences and their special education experiences. Right now, given the shortage in some of our classrooms, we're not choosing between um, specialized special education certification and general special education certification. We're choosing between what we offer here today and Mikey from the curb. And so we've got a lot of Mikeys from the curb teaching our young people, not simply in special education, but in other areas as well. And it requires us to think differently about certification. This is something that's been recommended in broad swaths of the special education community. This is something that exists in other states. We're certainly not in the avant-garde when it comes to certification of special education teachers in this way. There's a similarity to what we're doing with the certification of science teachers as well, where we have a generalist credential and stackable credentials on top. It doesn't preclude anybody from getting the specific credential, the deeper knowledge, the deeper experience base. We welcome that, but it also doesn't preclude someone from entering the field and helping young people with this level of experience, which is quite a bit greater than Mikey from the curb, and which can help our young people quite a bit more than can Mikey from the curb. So, so I just share that because this is an effort to get beyond the non-certified, teaching our young people, not simply in this space, but in other spaces as well. And just for future reference, not that I need to tell you how to do you, but I would never turn down a degree.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm already there. No, seriously.
Yeah, board members, any other questions or comments from the board?
During discussion on the motion.
Okay, very good. So if I could have a motion to approve the proposed standards for the preparation of special education teachers. Dr. Pritchett moves, and Ms. Tilley seconds. Any discussion associated with the motion? Mr. McMillan, to you.
Yeah, I have a general principle that I don't like people having to get the permission from the state to have a job, but in this case, I believe, looking at this actually lessens the restrictions and provides more opportunity, so I will be supporting.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMillan, and we appreciate the fact that your microphone is working today. Other board members and discussion. Okay. Heavy lunch that we had. Hearing no more discussion, if we could have a vote on the motion to approve the proposed standards for the preparation of special education teachers. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
No.
And Tilley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, board. Thank you, presenters. We appreciate you. Board, it's 2:11, and now we are going to hear the report to the State Board President. Dr. Pugh, to you.
Limited today. But of course, first recognizing Mental Health Awareness Month. And we know that we saw the placards there that acknowledging Mental Health Awareness Month. And we know that this is a time to recognize the importance of mental well-being, celebrate the unique strengths of individuals, and advocate for inclusion, understanding, and support in our schools and communities. Just some of the activities over since the last time we met. Lots of activities related to education across the state presented at the Detroit NAACP Education Luncheon, the Great Lakes Bay Region Youth Leadership Dinner, Dearborn Public Schools Educator Summit, Black mayors, getting an update on the state of affairs around education. There was an Ann Arbor Town Hall, and then last night, a Win with Black Women Michigan event that was focused on the state of education. Also want to make note that this month, at the beginning of the month, I received an invitation from Representative Jay DeBoyer, who is chair of the Michigan House Oversight Committee, to testify regarding the current state of public education in Michigan. I've been away, but definitely look forward to speaking to the representative and welcoming this opportunity to discuss not only the challenges, but yeah, that they've highlighted in the invitation, but also the decades-long systemic issues that we discuss here often at this table, and the issues that have shaped our current reality. Um, those challenges, we know that the State Board of Education has been actively addressing through collaborative and data-driven solutions. Um, there's an urgency that I recognize that's reflected in Representative DeBoyer's request, but it is important that, as speaking on behalf of the board, that we acknowledge that many of the issues we face today are the result of years of underfunding, policy choices, and systemic disinvestment in public education. We know that the State Board of Education, the majority of the State Board of Education has been steadfast in working to reverse these trends despite the obstacles created by past decisions that prioritize cuts over investments in our children's futures. Therefore, in my response, I will definitely emphasize that our testimony, or my testimony, will not only address the concerns raised by the representative, but also provide a comprehensive overview of the proactive steps we are taking as a board, as a department, to build and strengthen Michigan's public education system. And I could list them all. We know what they include. We know that we are working feverishly to close literacy gaps by improving the reading proficiency and improving reading proficiency through targeted intervention and the literacy laws that have been passed. Definitely prioritizing chronic underfunding of special education, increasing funding but equitable funding, promoting evidence-based policies that prioritize student well-being, mental health, and safety, especially in our underfunded and resource districts. Um, Also upholding and promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion by supporting the educational needs of children of color, LGBTQ plus students in our rural communities, and children with special needs. Um, and want to ensure that when we do this presentation, which I will provide the date to the board and make sure that you all are aware, there were a few dates that we were given, and making sure that Dr. Rice and and relevant MDE staff are able to be present and co-present. So I do greatly look forward to this opportunity. Not sure of the intent of the invite, but I greatly look forward to this as a platform to highlight how the State Board of Education, in partnership with educators, community leaders, policymakers, how we are actively working to address the root causes of the challenges, and how we will not allow public education to be undermined by attempts to shift blame, and making sure that we're focusing on sustainable student-centered solutions. So as always, along with you, I remain committed to advocating for our students, educators, and their families, and will continue to push for policies that strengthen public education rather than dismantle it. So thank you for your support. I will keep you apprised of the date of that, and will send this note on to the representative's office accepting that this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. I appreciate your sharing. I'm going to share in two separate ways, Board. The first, I want to acknowledge that last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, time we celebrate all teachers, all 90,000 of our Michigan teachers. But last Tuesday was particularly special because we had the opportunity to honor the 2025-2026 Michigan Teacher of the Year. Ms. Tiffany Tilley, Dr. Judy Pritchett were with me to celebrate the surprise announcement, such that you can have a surprise announcement of a Michigan Teacher of the Year, of Mr. Corey Rosser. Mr. Rosser is a social studies teacher at Quest High School in Lapeer County's North Branch area schools. He teaches in an alternative education program. He's known for his exceptional ability to connect with students who have struggled in traditional settings. A special thanks also to Ms. Tilley, who has been the board's representative on the Teacher of the Year Selection Committee. That's the person who interviews regional teachers of the year and ultimately crowns the Michigan Teacher of the Year. It was a privilege to be with Mr. Rosser, his students, his co-teacher, and one surprisingly very friendly snake on Tuesday. I know it sounds like an oxymoron. That's what I thought too before I went to Lapeer County. But this was a very, very friendly snake. You'll all have the opportunity to meet Mr. Rosser along with the 9 other 2025-2026 Regional Teachers of the Year when they join us at the board meeting in August to be honored. The snake is not invited, for those of you who are a little bit squeamish. Just to be clear, no snake, but 9 Regional Teachers of the Year, a Michigan Teacher of the Year. And Ms. Kuzmano is very excited about this as well. It is hard to sleep in a crown for a year. And as hard as it is to believe, she is looking forward to turning that honor over to someone else. And I had the opportunity last week to speak to the to MCATE and our College Association of Teacher Education. And what was beautiful about this group is it includes Kara Lougheed, who was herself a Michigan Teacher of the Year in 2019-2020 during that horrifying year when the pandemic hit and the Regional Teachers of the Year banded together and helped us put out advice on remote instruction. That was a fraught moment, and it was good to see Kara, and I think you will like Corey Rosser. So I'm going to move over here to my little mini makeshift library, if I could. The board, a few months ago, I went looking for a particular Robert Frost poem in this lovely book entitled 101 Famous Poems. I did not find the Frost poem, which I was looking, but I did spend a couple of hours reading the poetry in the book and reflecting upon what I had read coming up as a kid. When I was growing up, I basically did 2 things. I played a lot of sports and I read a lot of books. A shout out to my mom, who got me started by taking me day after day after day to the Fort McKinley Public Library in Dayton, Ohio, my hometown. Big believer in books, libraries, librarians, open access, big access to books, particularly in communities where kids have less and they need more from institutions like libraries. By the time I graduated from college, I'd read Hardy Boys, I'd read Encyclopedia Brown, I'd read boatloads of sports stories, but I'd also had the opportunity to read Plato and Sophocles. I'd had the opportunity to read whoever wrote Beowulf. Apparently that's lost to history. Had the opportunity to read Shakespeare, his sonnets, his tragedies, his comedies. Had the opportunity to read Emerson and Thoreau, Dickinson and Dickens, Hard Times, Tale of Two Cities, David Copperfield. I had the opportunity to read Melville and Poe, had the opportunity to read all of Salinger, but in fairness, Salinger didn't write a whole lot after Catcher in the Rye. He only wrote 3 books in Cornish, New Hampshire, and had the opportunity to read all of Kurt Vonnegut, at least everything that Kurt Vonnegut wrote before the summer of 1981, when I went on my Kurt Vonnegut jag. And then I kind of branched out, or tried to anyway. I read Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman, and The Crucible. Had the opportunity to read George Orwell, 1984, and Animal Farm. Moved on to some reflections on other countries. I read Cervantes, Don Quixote, where I learned the peril of tilting at windmills, something that's a good thing for superintendents to learn. And also read the literature of my people, Chaim Potok, Bernard Malamud, Shalom Aleichem, Elie Wiesel, and French literature as well. I would have a brilliant French teacher too, Robin Melnick and Claude Mukherjee in high school, and then go on to study a lot of French literature in college. So Saint-Exupéry, Sartre, Molière, Racine, and. Books have always been important to me. And I was proud of the breadth of literature that I had read coming up. And if you had asked me when I graduated from college, I would have told you that I was well read. And for some 22-year-olds, maybe I was. But in point of fact, not so much. I reflect upon the authors that I read coming up, and they were very much like this beautiful book of poetry, 101 famous poems. They were predominantly written by men. They were predominantly written by white men. And this is the literature I read growing up. It was beautiful in many regards, but it wasn't diverse. It wasn't diverse like the country, and it certainly wasn't diverse like the literary canon was and could have been for me. And it wasn't as diverse as the literary canon is today. So tick-tock goes the clock, and I graduate from college. I go to Washington, D.C., and I end up at Dunbar High School. And I think, well, there's a Dunbar High School in my hometown. Could this be a coincidence? It was not. Come to find out that both Dunbar High Schools and many other Dunbar High Schools are named after Paul Laurence Dunbar, famous black poet, in whose hometown I had grown up, Dayton, Ohio. But I didn't know that, number one, and I had never read him, number two. So at 22, I began to fill in the blanks. And I read Paul Laurence Dunbar. I read We Wear the Mask. I read When Melindy Sings. Beautiful poetry. Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1872 to 1906. He died long before his time. And I also had the opportunity to read Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes, this little itty-bitty book of poetry, has been through the war. It's been through 40 years of kids reading it. It's been through my kids reading it and me reading it. And I read by Langston Hughes as well, Fight for Freedom, the first history of the NAACP, Madam Board President, from 1909 to 1962, when he published the book. And I put Hughes and Dunbar on my bookshelf. I branched out. I read an anthology of African-American women, Confirmation, a beautiful anthology of black female writers, predominantly poets, beautiful poetry, some short stories, and I put Confirmation on my bookshelf. I kept reading. I read Alice Walker, She was a poet before she was a novelist. Horses Make a Landscape More Beautiful, Once, Revolutionary Petunias, and other poems, Color Purple. Beautiful work by Alice Walker. And also In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And if you've not read that series of essays by Alice Walker, it's well worth it. And I put Alice Walker on my bookshelf. I read Toni Morrison, Sula, Song of Solomon, Beloved, Tar Baby, The Bluest Eye, and I put Toni Morrison on my bookshelf. I read Ntozake Shange, who wrote For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide, When the Rainbow Is Enough, who wrote Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo, who wrote Nappy Edges. I put Ntozake Shange on my bookshelf. And I would put her and her sister, Ifa Bayeza, on my bookshelf when they would write Some Sing, Some Cry, a beautiful 7-generation story of an African-American family from 1864 to the present day, and I put them on my bookshelf. I read Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God, Mules and Men, Spunk. Zora Neale Hurston, an extraordinary author, mimic, cultural anthropologist, story writer, and I found room for Zora Neale Hurston on my bookshelf. I read James Baldwin, had the opportunity to read James Baldwin, Fire, next time. God Gave Noah the Rainbow Sign, No More Water, The Fire next time. Blues for Mr. Charlie, The Amen Corner, Go Tell It on the Mountain, Notes of a Native Son, and I found room for Baldwin on my bookshelf. I read Gwendolyn Brooks, who would be the first African-American writer to win a Pulitzer Prize for Literature in 1950 for the collection Bronzeville. I also read her selected poems, and I read 2 autobiographical works of Gwendolyn Brooks. I read Nikki Giovanni, who recently passed, may she rest in peace. Nikki Giovanni graced our literacy conference a couple of years ago as the keynote speaker. And I read Ego Tripping and Other Poems for Young People. And I read selected poems of Nikki Giovanni. Nikki Giovanni's poetry literally jumps off a page. I am so hip, even my errors are correct. Think about that line. And I tried to expand my reading. I read Pablo Neruda. I read Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease. So trying to read beyond the United States as well, to learn from other authors. Frantz Fanon, Paulo Freire, Aimé Césaire, trying to grow. And come to find out that the bookshelf was big enough to accommodate all of those authors, not just some of those authors, but all of those authors. Recently, there have been attacks on anything that falls broadly under the rubric of diversity, equity, and inclusion. More specifically, the U.S. Department of Education has suggested that a 2023 Supreme Court case, Students for Fair College Admissions versus Harvard College, sets a strict standard for anything that falls under this banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion. To be clear, that court case is about elite college admissions. It's about a zero-sum circumstance. You get into Harvard College, I don't. Zero sum. But much of what falls under the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not zero sum, but rather positive sum. It's an expansion. No winners, no losers. It's simply an expansion. And that's like diversity in literature. When I read Into Sake Shange, I don't pull William Shakespeare off the bookshelf. When I read Zora Neale Hurston, I don't pull Ernest Hemingway off the bookshelf. When I read Baldwin or Richard Wright or either of the Walkers, Alice or Margaret, I don't pull Poe or Melville or Eugene O'Neill or any other author off the bookshelf. There's room for them all on the bookshelf. Diversity in literature falls squarely under the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it is a positive sum. The bookshelf expands, the literary canon expands, children's engagement expands, children's knowledge expands. It is positive sum. There are no winners or losers. There is no illegal discrimination, and there is no violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Difference is richness, not stigma, and certainly no violation of civil rights acts. And with a nod to Biggie, if you don't know, now you know. Thank you. So, board, we are going to pivot to the presentation of our Teachers of the Year. Energy in the room now. We welcome Ms. Kelly Kuzmano, 2024-2025 Michigan Teacher of the Year, English Language Arts teacher at Rochester High School in Rochester Public Schools. And Mr. Calvin Nellum, Region 10 Regional Teacher of the Year, 8th grade science teacher at the Detroit Academy, who chased me down for a selfie. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Gentle people, welcome.
All right, well, I'm pleased today to introduce Calvin Nellum, and I won't take too long. I'll let him share his words of wisdom here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin Nellum. I'm a product of my mother from New Orleans Public Schools, Nidra West. I came to Michigan to teach, and I am teaching. I'm a teacher in science, specifically physics. I got my degree in physics. I have an endorsement in mathematics. And I'm a coach in all sports, but specifically learn how to build robots, where I've been able to successfully lead first robotics teams in high school. And this year we led our middle school team that participated in the only high school competition. We outranked 200 schools. We won the Rookie Award and Rising Star Award in robotics. So I'm very proud to be here. Thank you all. So essentially, I'm here because of my admin. I'm here because of my mentors. My daddy was never in my life, so my mother always tried to make sure that she put a lot of people in front of me to ensure that I had no excuse. And because of that, I'm here to talk to you about not just the teacher-student relationship, but the admin-teacher relationship. Because when we talk about recruiting teachers, we also got to do what? Retain them. And when we talk about the number one person that is really influential to teachers is the admin. Because if you think about it, when a student does an assignment, they want, here, teacher, look what I did. But imagine teachers, when they give out great lessons, they do great things for students. Who's there to give them that good job? It's the admin. So historically, we know that teachers remain in the schools longer, mostly in principals. Essentially what that means is that teachers are your experts. They're there. They're there doing the work. They're there with the kids. They are the counselors, they're the parents, they're teaching, they're doing all these great things. They're creating all these lifelines that 150 of those kids are depending on. But what about the need for that student, that teacher to get that need? It comes from the admin. So according to the new Teacher Center, students in schools with higher levels of reported instructional teacher leadership perform at 10% higher points in math, English, and compared to schools at lower levels. NTC studies also find that when teachers are involved in decision-making process related to school improvement, the student conduct pretty much is just a great outcome. And essentially what that means is that when teachers are asked, how do we fix this from admin, that's a huge, 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 huge thing for teachers, because why? You see me as an expert, you see I'm teaching kids, and you're asking for my input. If you implement it, oh, I'm for sure gonna stay at that school. And that's what we want. We wanna feel empowered. We wanna see what we're doing working, not just in the classroom.
So Calvin and I both have very similar philosophies on this. And this quote from the National Association of Secondary School Principals, I just want to read it out loud because I think it's really important. Redefining leadership in a school is not as simple as tapping talented people to head up new committees. So that is kind of the baseline, right? Like, you're a great teacher, you're going to be in charge of this extra thing. But if you do this right, and if you do this work correctly, as we both will talk about the success with our districts, you're able to cultivate teacher leadership in a way that promotes teachers to stay. You lead without leaving. That's one of my favorite lines. And teacher leadership is really a matter of partnership between administrators and teachers. This capitalizes on teacher strengths, and I can say with my own administration, allowing me to be a leader but also remain in the classroom was what kept me in the career field. I know that for a fact. And to build these roles takes careful and authentic work on both parties to make sure it's not just adding an extra duty. So now we're going to transition into what makes that teacher leadership dynamic positive.
Yep, so essentially what we're talking about is removing the managerial, and ask, you're gonna manage, I'm gonna tell you what to do, but I wanna know that you can teach my class, right? Because if you can't teach my class, I'm gonna listen to what you're saying, but I'm not gonna listen to all of it, because teachers, we care about expertise. We care about you being an intellectual giant. So if you can come in my classroom, do what I'm doing, oh, I'm definitely gonna listen to you, and I'm gonna lean on you, and I'm gonna ask for help, and I'm gonna support you. Going back to everything that we do as teachers, if I don't have someone that's gonna be there to, good job, Nella. I see what you're doing, Nella. Very good. We need those things, right? And you think about your favorite teacher. Think about that amazing lesson that they gave you. What if there was an admin that didn't tell them good job? How do you think they felt, right? And then they gave another lesson. 69 lessons went by, no good job. That teacher's gonna feel not appreciated. That teacher's not gonna feel what they're doing is not being fully appreciated. And the admin is as simple as, I see what you're doing, Nella. Keep it up. I promise you, it does a lot. And so we wanna take the managerial role and elevate it to, I see you in me. You're gonna be a superintendent one day, Mr. Nullum. You're gonna be just like Mr. Rice one day, Mr. Nullum. But you gotta do these little bitty things. That empowers teachers, right? Because we can't empower students if we're not empowering teachers. And so essentially at Detroit Academy of Arts and Science, we have a passing the torch model where you come off as a student teacher, 3 years go by, you're a general teacher, 5 years go by, you're still a novice teacher, right? You're not quite a master, right? But for me right now, in my 9 years teaching, I can say I'm a model teacher. From all my mentors, from all my admin that I've been able to do, we have a model teacher program where we essentially have a program where say, this is what it looks like to be a teacher that can do an exit ticket and get growth. This is what it looks like to have a teacher that has good classroom management. This is what it looks like. You understand what I mean? And so when we have that process, a teacher can come in as a general teacher and hopefully become a model teacher. And they're staying at the school. So if we say, come to my school, you'll eventually become a model teacher, we're gonna retain those teachers. We're gonna develop you. And essentially what happened when I went to Detroit Academy of Arts and Science. I came in as a general teacher, they saw what I had, and they immediately invested in me. Principal mentor, okay, Calvin, you gotta do these little bitty things. Miss House, we're gonna work on some things. We work on your classroom management. And throughout a whole year, I became a model teacher. And I'm not a master teacher yet. I am getting my national board certification. But I am nothing without my admin supporting me, right? And so teaching, we wanna recruit them, but we have to retain them. How do we retain them? We empower them by just being a great human.
And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what this looks like in Rochester Community Schools. So my master's degree is in curriculum and instruction from Michigan State. And so one of the ways my district has leveraged my expertise outside the classroom is by creating curriculum consultant positions. And at Rochester, there's one for each of what we call the core fours. So English, math, science, and social studies. We also have other positions that work with arts and PE, et cetera, but these are the people I work with the closest. There's also representation at the middle school level. And we are full-time teachers, but we also have release time to work on district initiatives and curriculum objectives in our specialized subject areas. What we find is that it flexes our time, it flexes our minds, and we're able to be better, stronger teachers because of the work that we do in leadership. And I really feel like this was something that I advocated for years with my district, because when you think about in a traditional public school space, leadership a lot of times is very straightforward. You're a teacher. If you want to be a leader, you have to step out of the classroom and you become an assistant principal, which don't get me started on what that position looks like and what, they do, shout out, but assistant principal, and then you become principal, and then you move on. Why does it have to be like that? It really is kind of just a historical part, and both of us come from districts that flex that, and it should be championed and celebrated that there's not just one path to education leadership, and it certainly isn't just you get out of the classroom and go to be an assistant principal to leverage that leadership. So that was kind of both of our perspectives. Also, when you think about this, I love this quote: managerial tasks do not stir the blood of dedicated teachers. So that is not what we want here. They desire to solve complex problems that they are faced with in the classroom. If you want to talk to us about teacher retention, you want to talk to Calvin about robotics and how to bring that to more students, that's what we think about, and that's what we do in our leadership capacities and roles. In the graphic on the right, when you elevate and empower a teacher leader, they learn to shape educational policy. It encourages professional autonomy. They facilitate change management. I can't tell you how many times I love this phrase when people talk about teachers in the field. I always feel like I'm like a lion hunter or tracking or something, but it means that we're in the day to day. We're doing things, and so when you empower us to speak beyond our classroom environment and at the level of board meetings and curriculum strategies and things, we have stuff to say. And I would argue that we say it louder and pretty eloquent. Yeah. So, and it strengthens collaboration. I've learned so much from, I think I mentioned it before, science teachers and talking about phenomena. Now I know what phenomena is beyond the English classroom. And that's because I work really closely with our science curriculum consultants, and just really that there is more of a space and there's more flexibility than what has traditionally been seen for leadership. That one.
So those teachers in leadership are uniquely positioned to work in areas of educational advancement. They are most interested in without having to make either the choice between being a classroom or full-time administrator. As teacher leaders, they can essentially have the foot in both worlds. And again, I'm an intellectual giant. I don't want to be an admin. I want to stay in education until, like my mother, 40 years, right? And I take pride in that. And that's not the paradigm right now. And we want people to stay in education because we need more educators. We need great educators. And we also need great admins to support them. So thank you all.
And then to kind of finish us out, it's been a busy month for me going around the state. But I think one of the things that I've been most proud of is with the regional teachers, we've been able to speak to a lot of colleges about why you should be in the field of education. Again, I think that is probably the best part of the job and what I've enjoyed with the regional teachers. We've spoken at U of M Flint, Michigan State, Central Michigan, and just being able to kind of demystify what kind of the national narrative has been, that it's a very scary field to go in, and I'm not arguing it's not without its challenges, but this is an
It's one of the
amazing
best
career.
jobs. It's one of the best jobs ever.
And so you can kind of take it from there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Teachers of the Year. We appreciate you. We appreciate intellectual giants. But intellectual giants should aspire higher than the superintendency.
Amen.
Board members, questions or comments for our Teachers of the Year? Dr. Robinson, Ms. Lipton.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, about teacher leadership, and you kind of really, you laid it out exactly right. If teachers have aspirations for leadership, they're often counseled out of the classroom, right, into higher education, into administrative roles. I think for a lot of us in this room, we have been in the profession or around the profession during a time when a whole level of kind of middle management, if you will, in education has been just obliterated. There used to be subject area supervisors for every academic area in most medium to large size school districts. Those positions are almost gone now. Oh, thank you. I apologize, and now you might have to hear what I say. But, you know, in my area, I'm a music teacher. There used to be a music supervisor in every school district in the state, in every, you know, moderate-sized school system in the country. In some states, we're down to 3 or 4, only in the largest cities. And what happens is when you don't have what I call chief worriers for certain subjects, you know, I need a chief worrier for robotics. Now I have a robotics program because you care, because you're the worrier. When I make it the supervisor of robotics, music, fine arts, and lunch services, now I don't have anybody that's really caring about that. So I think you're exactly right that we need to find ways for people to stay in the classroom, but have a role in leadership in the district. And it can't be an add-on to what you're already doing, because that's what we're also good at asking teachers to do. Would you take on another duty? Would you take, when I started teaching, I wanted to have a jazz band. They never had a jazz band. You can do the jazz band Wednesday nights out of your own pocket.
Right.
And if it's really successful, maybe we'll pay you a couple $100 a year. So like, I think we have to value what teachers know, value what they do. When we put together educator roundtables, there should be teachers on those educator roundtables, right? Not just people who left the classroom 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
We need the voice of teachers on a daily basis helping to guide the profession forward. So everything you said here is just right down the middle. We should be doing more of it. And I hope that people that are helping run school districts are listening to what you're saying and finding ways to empower the teachers in their districts. So thank you both for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Ms. Lipton?
Yes, thank you. I enjoy and learn from all of the presentations, but the Teacher of the Year and the Art Toy presentations are by far the ones that are most valuable to me. Someone that thinks about education, but really wants to hear from the lived experiences of those that are actually in the profession. So thank you, both of you, for bringing this really, really important issue to the table. We do spend a lot of time and you know, people are always talking about fixing education, but without being overly simplistic, it's really quite logical when you think about it. And you really brought that, you know, empower people to practice the profession that they went to school and they take pride in. One thing that I would like to uplift is paying them appropriately.
Yeah.
And making sure that the increase in pay doesn't come with a removal from the classroom.
Can I add to that real quick? So at our model teaching program at Detroit Academy of Arts and Science, we say, you know, if you can be a great communicator, you can lead a grade level team, you can, you know, obviously teach an expertise, be a model teacher, we'll pay you 6 figures. So we're telling teachers that they're coming in. We have, it's our second year having a model teacher program. We have another cohort of model teachers. And essentially, we're just putting great kids in front of, great teachers in front of good, amazing kids in Detroit. And it's the results are flowing. So definitely, you all should definitely come to Detroit Academy of Arts and Science and witness it for yourself.
Yes, we would love that. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Others? Ms. Tilly?
Thank you both so much for the presentation. I think that was probably one of the best ones I've seen. And really appreciate the leadership aspects. And Kelly, that was one of the things that stood out about you was the leadership. My undergraduate degree is organizational leadership and communications. So I really felt the leadership part would be really strong for the MTOY to be able to help to coach the RTOYs. So love that. And really loved your delivery with the presentation. And wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about your experience as an RTOY. And I really love the part of the presentation where, you know, you're talking about the problems, but you're also very solution oriented.
Yeah.
Are there any other aspects of education that you want to talk about that you, because you can only fit so much in a presentation.
Yeah.
So are there any other aspects, things that we could do better?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say is just, you know, whenever you see a teacher, tell them thank you for your service because it is a tremendous service, right? And once teachers understand that they're in the service, they understand that they're doing a lot for America, right? You know, we're ranked 55th, 45th in the nation in education internationally, right? And so we have a lot of work to do as a country. And so just, you know, tell your next teacher, you know, thank you for their service, right? And continue to fight for education. We're in a good fight. I love it. I'm happy to be here. I'm a representative of my mother, New Orleans Public School, 40 years. I'm gonna keep saying that, right? Because I have great reverence for her. She was my first admin. And so I am nothing without her. And so please continue to uplift teachers, continue to put your money where your mouth is, and, you know, tutor for a little bit.
Thank you, and thank you both for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilly. Other questions, comments, concerns, reflections of board members?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. Appreciate you. Dr. Pugh, to you on the search for the next state superintendent of public instruction.
Just a quick update. We did have requests for proposals that were out, and that the period for the search firms to submit proposals ended last Friday, April 25th. So as you recall, during the last meeting that we had, monthly meeting, we said that we would be enlisting a search firm, and so that process is well underway. So a committee that will be the Joint Evaluation Committee, or the JEC, which the State Board of Education will definitely be represented, will be meeting with the procurement team, and we will be reviewing those submitted proposals later this week. And then, as I've discussed with some of you, our next step in the process would be to put forward a recommendation and have that discussion during our May 20th work session. So that is our update on the search for state superintendent. And in summary, that we do have proposals, and we'll be reviewing those proposals, and the window has closed for those proposals to be submitted.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Board, we are going to move to state and federal legislative update. We'll hear from Bob Wheaton, our Director of the Office of Governmental Affairs, Ms. Olivia Ponte, our legislative liaison in the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, will provide the state and federal legislative update, primarily state, and then I'll share a couple of reflections on federal, and we'll pivot to the two resolutions. Gentle people.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Rice. We're still in the middle of budget season, so we have a lot going on there. We have a lot of other legislation, and Olivia will go into details about it.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
So as Bob said, we definitely are busy, so I will share first on policy, and then I will pivot over to budget. So the Senate Education Committee took testimony and reported out the Senate version of the cell phone bill this month, and the Senate also voted that bill out of the chamber by a vote of 28 to 9 last week. And the House Education and Workforce Committee also took testimony on the House version of their cell phone bill this month. There is a potential substitute in the works that we anticipate will be adopted at tomorrow's House Education and Workforce Committee meeting, and we will see where those two bills go from there. As a reminder, the Senate version would require local districts to create a policy that discourages cell phone usage, while the House version prescribes the policy that for districts to adopt differentiated by grade level. Importantly, the Senate version does include exceptions for students with IEPs, 504 plans, and emergency situations, so the department supported the Senate version of the cell phone bill. The House has continued to hear testimony in committee, most recently on bills to amend the sharing of okay to say tips and school safety training. The House also passed bills that we discussed last month on amendments to Michigan Merit Curriculum and pilot state assessment programs. Last week, the House unanimously passed a bill that would, only for the 2024-2025 school year, allow local boards of districts in a county covered by the state of emergency to exempt the district from the days and hours requirement for the days that were missed due to the state of emergency, and that is capped at 15 days. So that bill passed out of the House this month. Just this morning, Dr. Carnell, along with Drs. St. Martin and Saylor, testified before the House Appropriations Subcommittee on School Aid and MDE to provide an update and share the department's progress on the Committee for Literacy Achievement and the $87 million grant program that goes along with that. So that is the policy update. Moving on to budget, the Senate, MDE, and School Aid proposed budgets were both reported from the full Senate Appropriations Committee last week. The Senate MDE budget would fully fund the the executive budget recommendation, and additionally fund one FTE to oversee the requirements of PA 11 of 2024, which requires MDE to review any educational program provided in a child caring institution. So MDE had requested 3 FTE for this new statutory responsibility. We were provided with 1 in the Senate recommended budget. The Senate school aid budget included a $400 or 4.2% per pupil increase, a $258 million, 25% increase to Section 31A or at-risk funding, $12 million or 25% increase for Section 41 bilingual education funding, $350 million for infrastructure grants to districts. It also maintained $10 million in funding for letters training, more than doubled funding for Orton-Gillingham, continued funding for Michigan school meals, general education transportation reimbursement. The Senate proposed budgeting $350 million for school safety and mental health grants, with $75 million of that being recurring funding. The Senate school aid budget also continued funding for the My Future Educator fellowships and stipends, and provided more than a doubling of funding for the AP, IB, and CLEP test reimbursements, as well as adding more than $85 million in new CTE funding. As you may recall in the exec rec, it was funded at $125 million, which is what we had requested to be spent over 5 years. But we did get that $85 million in the Senate recommended budget. And lastly, there was $75 million appropriated to continue, about $75 million, to continue funding in Section 35M for the Committee for Literacy Achievement and the grants associated therewith. The Senate budget also recognized that the legislature had gone too far in permitting 15 virtual days of student instruction to count towards the 180-day minimum for student instructional days and reduced that number down to 7 in the proposed budget on the Senate side. The department continues to advocate for a reversal of the 2019 and 2023 legislative cuts to in-person student instruction time, which permitted 7 staff professional development days to count towards student instruction and 15 virtual days to count as in-person student instruction respectively. And with that, I will turn it back to Dr. Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wheaton, Ms. Ponte. We appreciate the update. You covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. Board members, questions or comments? Dr. Pugh.
Questions. So related to the mental health recurring dollars, so we've gone from 300 million to 75 million in this proposed budget. Well, we're at what, 130?
We're currently, so the original past budget for FY25 started at 25 million, and then they passed an additional 125 million.
Right.
So we're at about 150.
To 75 million.
Importantly, the Senate proposes $350 million total. The 75 is just the recurring.
Okay.
So that gap would be one-time funding.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So there would be an increase in both the recurring and the non-recurring amount.
That is correct. For FY25,
Gotcha.
only
Okay.
25 million is recurring.
Okay, I completely missed that first part. The childcare, can you go over that again? You said that there.
Yeah, these, from last session, there were 3 foster care laws that were passed that Rep. Young came in and spoke to us about. And one of those 3 laws, PA 11 of 2024, requires MDE to provide regular review of educational programming in child caring institutions. So we had requested 3 FTE to do that work, as was included in the House fiscal analysis of those bills, now laws. So the Senate proposed MDE budget included one of those FTE.
Okay. And then going back to the 15 to 7 virtual days, as well as the proposals that we've made and where we are, if you can kind of like recap that again.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we all know, there's 180 days of required student instruction between the 6 plus the additional 3 for instances beyond the district's control, plus 7 for staff for professional development days, plus 15 for virtual instruction. A child could experience only 149 days of in-person instruction. So on the one piece, the 15 days that are allowed to be counted as virtual instruction, the Senate proposed budget reduces that number from 15 to 7. But so far, the exec rec nor the Senate has acknowledged the 7 days of professional development. So we're continuing to advocate for that.
And then just one other thing I saw on a Facebook post. It sounds like we are moving forward with the cursive writing bill and with the representative, and that's a resolution that we passed a few months ago. So just wanted to get an update on that.
Yeah, so far we do not have a bill introduced, but Dr. Rice and I had a really great conversation with Representative Carter.
Okay, that's good. Sounds like she thought the same. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Other board members? Other reflections? Let's just lift up time one more time, okay? So 180 days, 1,098 hours is what is in statute, but it is not what children experience in Michigan schools. They experience 180 days minus 6 act of God days that local school districts can declare. perfectly legitimate. It certainly can be bad weather in the state of Michigan. 3 days from the department. But then in addition to that, 7 professional development days without school children can count as student instructional days. And 15 virtual days can count toward the 180. So what children can experience in person under state statute is 149 days as a function of 2 changes that have been made to state statute since 2019. Our kids have benefited from improved funding and other improvements as well, but they've not benefited from the diminishment in time. The legislature created it. The legislature needs to rectify it. Fact of the matter is that our young people are not going to improve to the extent that they need to in their education if their time on task is diminished. So we need to rectify this. And I'm hopeful that our legislature and our executive will join us in this effort. Board, any other questions or reflections? Okay. Dr. Carnell had the opportunity with our literacy team to testify today. Want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chair Kelly invited us to testify to share regarding the Section 35M grant. This is the $87 million going to districts to select curricula, early literacy series and materials, and professional development that will be ranked by the Committee for Literacy Achievement. These are members who have demonstrated experience in literacy and, profound alignment to the science of reading. And Dr. Carnell, Dr. St. Martin, and Dr. Shaler shared this morning that the committee was formed and has met, and the RFP for vendors to submit their materials has closed, and they're currently reviewing materials, and that list will be made publicly available on June 2nd. So June 2nd, districts will begin to see what they can spend the $87 million on. And importantly, this is really an on-ramp for districts to begin to comply with PA 146 and 147, which are the dyslexia/literacy laws that were passed and signed October of last year. There was no funding associated directly with PA 146, so this gives districts an opportunity to grab onto this funding and purchase a curriculum, materials, professional development for their educators that will comply with this law. The list that the department will create of approved assessments and curricula that aligns to the science of reading for PA 146 will be released by January 1st. And then again, as a reminder, districts will be required to comply with these laws, PA 146 and 147, in the 2027-2028 school year.
So board, we've offered the legislature 4 ideas to continue the effort to improve literacy. The one is associated with time. The second is associated with the high quality instructional materials, 35M funding. The third is mandatory letters training. We appreciate the funding for optional letters training, but we'd like mandatory letters training so that all early literacy instruction is informed by science of reading, professional development, and then low class sizes for high poverty K-3s. And we're going to talk about this relative to a resolution from Dr. Robinson in a moment, so I'm not going to belabor that now. But we're not going to get there with 830 districts doing their own thing in the state of Michigan. We're going to have to narrow and deepen our work on high-quality instructional materials, on pre-service training, on in-service training, on coaching, on screening for characteristics of dyslexia, on intervention for characteristics of dyslexia. It doesn't come free. It doesn't come free, and it doesn't come without time. And we need to narrow and deepen our efforts in the state on literacy. Dr. Pugh.
There was a mention of, what was it, $10 million for it? Okay, is that? Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. So right now, we don't have the dollars to increase the numbers.
So we have, so the issue is not dollars now for letters training. It is the mandatoriness. It's exactly right.
Okay.
So we've had $10 million a year the last 3 years. We had a smidgen the first year. So I think we had 4 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million in the last 4 years, 22 to 25. The issue is not the dollars at this point. It's the number of people. 3,600 plus have finished the training. 6,500 are engaged in the training. We'd like, instead of 10,000 to complete the training, we'd like 30,000 to complete the training.
And then the amount of dollars to go from that leap from 10,000 to 30,000.
So it's a little bit involved, but suffice it to say, it's not on a per head basis.
Okay, I got it.
Okay?
Okay.
So that there isn't a one-to-one relationship between more participants in PD, more cost associated with. Yeah.
Okay.
Más preguntas, plus de questions, more questions, comments? No, can't give it away. Okay. Dr. Carnell, do you have anything to add about your testimony today?
Thank you, Dr. Rice. The subcommittee on appropriations for school aid and the department budget were concerned about the number of vendors out there that are already in schools. EPIC was also part of the testimony today, and in their report, they cited that there are 444 curricular items out there for school districts to use. So during our testimony, Rep. Kelly asked about, well, shouldn't we deepen and narrow, as Dr. Rice has suggested? And everyone agrees that we need to do that, and we're on the path of doing that basically through P35M, and so we expect that list to come out soon. Now, Rep. Kelly asked whether or not it would be 5 on the list, and then Representative Glanville asked about 20. And so as I advocated on behalf of Dr. Rice for more money in Section 35M, we are only able to put out a list of top quality or ranked items or ranked vendors based on the number of vendors that we receive through the RFP or RFS, request for services, that we received. We'd like to have more iterations of that cycle so we can get more vendors to the table to increase the number of offerings from vendors in certain areas, curricular materials, professional development, and tools and services. So the ask was, on behalf of Dr. Rice, to more money for 35M so that we can fund more schools to get high-quality, evidence-based materials. Thank you, Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Carnell. Stay there because that was a lot, and there may be riffs off of that from our board members. Board members, did that awaken any thoughts in your minds? Okay, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Board, anything more on the report of Ms. Ponte? Once, twice, thrice. If not, we're going to pivot to the federal level. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel has been involved in many cases on behalf of the state of Michigan in the last 3.5, almost 4 months. The department is engaged in 6 of those cases, and I want to give you a very brief update on each of those 6. Birthright citizenship. So, A.G. Nessel, 18 attorneys general across the country sued the federal administration on the issue of birthright citizenship, the executive order that said basically birthright citizenship ends on February 19th, 2025. There is a national injunction against that executive order, and that case is going before the Supreme Court this week. So that's one case in which we have an active interest, and we filed a declaration. The second case is the pause in federal funding, federal grants, federal loans. Again, there is an injunction, and we filed a declaration. The third case, in which A.G. Nessel is a part, multi-state coalition, is the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. We filed a declaration. The motion for an injunction has not yet been decided. So we have a pending motion for an injunction in the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. The elimination of the Institute for Museum and Library Sciences. You heard our state librarian, longtime state librarian, Randy Riley, proud class of 1980, Ionia class of 1980, Mr. McMillan, and there is an injunction enjoining the federal administration from moving forward on the IMLS cuts, the library cuts. ESSER late liquidation. A.G. Nessel filed on behalf of 15 attorneys general across the country. We filed a declaration in this case, as we did in the other cases, and the injunction was granted. The federal administration has been precluded from moving forward in the way in which it had attempted to move forward, essentially saying on March 28th, 2025 at 5:03 p.m. that liquidation had ended 3 minutes earlier. Not that any of us remember this. Federal administration enjoined from moving forward in that way, has to open up a 14-day window to permit additional late liquidation requests to be considered. And then finally, Title VI, the Title VI verification letter. 4 lawsuits on this issue. First 3 lawsuits subject to injunctions a week and a half ago. The lawsuit of A.G. Nessel, several other attorneys general followed that lawsuit. It is pending, but federal administration enjoined for the moment from moving forward. All of these injunctions are preliminary injunctions. They're not permanent injunctions, they're preliminary injunctions. It's an important distinction. It's also important to note that the granting of a preliminary injunction says that if this case were to be fully heard on the merits, it would be likely that the party that moved to enjoin, that filed a motion to enjoin, would likely succeed on the merits. We'll keep this space open, and we'll keep updating you, and by extension, members of the media, because there's a lot flying, and members of the community, because there's a lot flying. But I do think it's important to note that while these early cases, while we've certainly seen some success on behalf of states that have pushed back on early actions of this federal administration. We're entering into a federal budget process. And that federal budget, presumably, is supposed to be passed by September 30th, 2025, because the new federal fiscal year begins October 1st, 2025. That will be a really important moment for us. What will the federal legislature, Congress, do? Many of these cases are premised on the federal executive circumventing separation of powers and ignoring a federal budget. But if a federal budget includes some of the cuts to which we've referred and some of the cuts to which we have not yet referred substantially, like Medicaid cuts, then the arguments about separation of powers become, if not fully moot, then certainly less relevant. If the cuts are woven into a budget, it is a different ballgame entirely. So the federal budget process is important. What happens in these cases in the judiciary over the next 5 months, really important. This is not theoretical. Notwithstanding what some may say, public schools in the state are underfunded. And though the federal government does not fund a large share of public education in the state of Michigan or anywhere else, given the pie, we can't afford to diminish the federal share. And certain communities, larger, urban, more substantially economically disadvantaged, Detroit, for example, are disproportionately funded with federal dollars and are disproportionately vulnerable to federal education budget cuts. This is a moment, gentle people. And to suggest that it will just work out is not accurate. So we have to not simply be vigilant, we also have to be vocal. If you do not believe that federal budget cuts make sense, you need to get on the horn and have a conversation with your congressperson or your U.S. senator or both, and let him, her, it, them know that you want the federal education budget fully funded. Mr. Wheaton, Ms. Ponte, thank you so much for your presentation. Board members, we have 2 resolutions to consider. Dr. Robinson, thank you for moving yours.
I will read it into the record, if that's okay.
It would be great if you would move it and we get a second, and then you may read it.
Second. Let me move it.
Okay, it's moved, it's seconded, and now
Second first, that's
it's moved by Dr. Robinson. Dr. Pritchett has seconded that emotion or that motion, and Dr. Robinson, it's back to you to read it into the record.
Thank you. Whereas research has shown smaller class size improves the learning environment for students because teachers are better able to address the needs of their students both academically and holistically. Whereas many studies show that class size reduction leads to better student outcomes in every way that can be measured, including better grades and test scores, fewer behavior problems, greater likelihood to graduate from high school on time and subsequently enroll in college. Whereas, according to the Education Policy Initiative at the University of Michigan, the student-teacher ratio substantially understates the number of students per class in all core academic subjects in every grade level. Whereas many students in Michigan, which has no legal cap on class size, find themselves in especially large classes. In first grade, nearly 1 in 20 students has a homeroom of 40 or more students. In seventh and ninth grade, more than 1 in 10 students has at least one core class of that size. Whereas the risk of large classes in Michigan is not evenly distributed across race, economic level, or urbanicity. Black ninth graders are over 3 times as likely as their white peers to be in such large classes. Whereas at every grade level, students receiving meal subsidies are 60 to 70% more likely to be in large classes than their peers not receiving subsidies. Whereas nearly 1 in 4 ninth graders in urban districts are in at least one class of 40 or more students, while only 1 in 50 students in rural districts find themselves experiencing this situation. Whereas the State House of Representatives has proposed cutting more than $5 billion from the school aid budget for fiscal year 25-26, a 25% reduction in funding for the state's public schools that would likely make it impossible for schools in the most overcrowded communities to have enough physical space to lower class sizes. Whereas the Michigan Department of Education recommends that priority should be given to funding for the fiscal year 2026 budget to allow high poverty schools to hire more teachers to lower the student to teacher ratio in their K-3 classrooms, thus providing more intense focus on the teaching of literacy and numeracy for those students who have greater needs. Therefore, be it resolved, the State Board of Education supports the recommendation of the Michigan Department of Education that priority should be given to funding for the fiscal year 2026 budget to allow high poverty schools to hire more teachers to lower the student to teacher ratio in K-3 classrooms. Be it therefore resolved that school class sizes be limited by the 2030 to 31 academic year to no more than 20 students per class in grades K-3, no more than 23 students per class in grades 4 through 8, and no more than 25 students per class in grades 9 through 12, with reasonable exceptions made for physical education and performing arts classes, career technical education, and in consultation with specialist teachers in these and other certification areas. Be it therefore resolved, the State Board of Education urges the state legislature to enact legislation calling for increased funding to ensure schools be able to lower class sizes to the mandated levels. Be it resolved that the legislature urges the Michigan Department of Education to require school districts to devise and implement an effective class size reduction plan with assurances that funding for staffing and infrastructure will be available as soon as possible to ensure these goals are achieved by the 2030-31 academic year.
So thank you very much, Dr. Robinson. We have a motion, we have a second. It's been read into the record. Dr. Robinson, to you to tell us anything that you didn't in your motion.
I think it was pretty self-explanatory, so I'll just ask my colleagues to weigh in.
Okay. Dr. Robinson indicates that the resolution covers the waterfront. Any reflections? Mr. McMillan.
I sent an amendment to everybody just a minute ago. So I'd like to make an amendment. It would say, in the second be it therefore resolved paragraph, after urges, remove, quote, the state legislature to enact legislation calling for increased funding, and replace it with, quote, school districts to reduce administrative costs. So it would say, be it therefore resolved, the State Board of Education urges school districts to reduce administrative costs to ensure schools to be able to lower class sizes. Oh yeah, and then also remove to the mandated levels. That's part of the amendment.
Okay, if you would please read the entirety of the second resolve.
It would be the second, be it therefore resolved. It's the third resolve.
Fair enough.
Okay. Be it therefore resolved, the State Board of Education urges school districts to reduce administrative costs to ensure schools be able to lower class sizes.
Okay, and the idea is that we can end up lowering class sizes.
Would you like me to second?
Consistent with. I'm just asking for. You know what? The answer is yes. Yeah. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much. So we have a motion. We have a second. Point of clarification. So the idea is that we can fund these reductions through administrative savings.
Yeah, I'm referencing Reason Foundation. They had a February 2024 article, and nationally, it gave some national statistics that I don't necessarily need to repeat, but in Michigan, from 2002 to 2020, so in 18 years, the student population for public schools went down 13.6%. Public school teacher reductions was 14.2, so roughly about the same, whereas non-school teacher growth went down 7.7%. This is a huge amount. You know, and I'm certain that we could achieve a significant reduction in class sizes merely if districts redirected their funding and their expenditures away from administrative costs and toward the classroom. So that is my amendment. You know, on a national level, per pupil students, inflation adjusted has gone from 12.8 thousand to 16.1 thousand per student, 25% increase. And certainly
in what period of time?
In that same time.
In 18 years?
Well, yeah, inflation adjusted. So I mean, it's in in real numbers, or in inflation adjusted, it went up 25%. So I'm sure it was 100, you know, 100 or whatever it was, but that's irrelevant. The raw numbers, it's inflation adjusted. It went up 25%. Well, that was just nationally revenue per student, but just in Michigan, you know, teachers took the brunt. The number of teachers went down 14%, which is roughly equivalent to the number of students that left public education. But public non-teacher growth or reductions was only 7.7%. And so, I mean, we're talking about all they'd have to do is redirect those funds to the classroom, and we could more than make up for, and reduce class sizes to the desired levels. I'm certain of it.
Well, if you don't mind sending us that article, I'm sure board members would like to familiarize themselves with it. Dr. Pugh, to you.
And you're basing this thought strictly on the percentage, the difference in reduction.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just saying that.
And what do you see administrative cost being in that report, or in
Yeah,
your
I was
mind?
saying that administrative costs were roughly, it was roughly 50-50 is what this report was saying. 50% teacher, 50% non-teacher as far as costs.
Seems like we would defeat the purpose of adding more staff if
we reduce administrators, we can add more staff. That's all it's saying.
Well, the schools that I'm in, that wouldn't help the educators as well as the educators that sat at the end of the table. I mean, I would love to hear Ms. Kuzmano's thoughts on that.
Did you have your hand up?
Does that then mean teachers are doing managerial?
Let's do this. I mean, it's an interesting conversation, but let's bring it back through the chair. Okay.
Does that mean that educators are then doing managerial administrative tasks at teachers?
It is a question. It also presumes that there's overstaffing in public schools. Ms. Kuzmano, is that your impression in Rochester?
No, but if you talk to me about class sizes, I think it's a both and scenario. I think class sizes need to be smaller, there's no question. But I would argue that, at least in my capacity, that administrators are working hard, if not harder, than teachers in a lot of spaces. Like, that job is a grind. And they are 24, especially when I reference this, I reference like the building principals, the assistant principals. I mean, they are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think it is one of the most unforgiving positions in education, is to be a building level administrator. So I would argue we need more of them right in the buildings than less. And then I also think it's a both and scenario, because we have buildings who cannot hold smaller classes because there's no room to put those teachers and classrooms. So we would have to invest in infrastructure at a much higher level locally. And as we've seen with bond proposals, some communities pass them and some don't. So if you lower a class size, you have to have spaces for those people to go. And I know at least in our building, we are maxed out. And you know, you could look up our class sizes. They're big, but there's no other room to put them. So
Remind me, 1,700 kids at your school?
1,789.
Okay.
About.
Counting. All right, very, very good. How many APs do you have?
We have 2. And when I started, we had 3.
So you have a principal and 2 assistant principals.
Correct.
How many counselors do you have? Do you know off the top of your head?
We have 6.
Okay.
And that was because of COVID funds. We used to have 5 until COVID funds added 1.
So you're about 300 to 1 when it comes to counselors. And when it comes to administrators, you're about 600 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. We have a, just to be clear, we have a motion, and we have a motion to amend now on the table. It's Mr. McMillan's motion
And
to
I'd like to
amend.
reply to that.
Please.
Real quickly. I mean, just nationally, this article, and I sent it to everybody, would say that non-teachers, okay, that nationally student enrollment of public schools has gone up from 47.7 million to 50.7 in those 18 years, 6.6%. The number of teachers went from 3 million to 3.2 million, a 6.6% increase. So the same non-teachers went from 2.9 to 3.5, a 20% increase. So, I mean, that, you know, Michigan may be a little bit different, but I mean, those are kind of the numbers, is while nationally number of teachers went up about, well, exactly the same number, 6.6%, non-teachers went up 20% in that 18 years. So, you know, that's, when you're talking about negative numbers with Michigan, it's a little bit less, a little bit more difficult to understand, but we're talking about, you know, the number of non-teachers far, you know, surpassed the number of teachers in that 18 years. So that.
Okay. So you're sharing with us national data, which we appreciate.
No,
Dr.
I shared
Robbins?
Michigan too.
All right, fair enough. And you're going to share the article with us?
I
Good.
sent it to
Okay, cool. Thank you. So we have a motion to amend by Mr. McMillan. It's been seconded by Ms. Snyder. Is there any additional conversation about the motion to amend? Hearing and seeing none.
So-
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I think you've raised your hand like 3 times, and I would like to hear before I weigh in.
Well, I was gonna say, I've definitely dealt with the overcrowding situation. But we have an Artoy that's from an urban district and kind of wanted him to weigh in, actually.
Okay. All right. Very good. Mr. Nellam. You thought you were done for the day.
You have to shut it off and turn it around.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. So essentially, when we think about Martin Luther King High School, which is right down the street from Detroit Academy of Arts and Science, the average size classroom, if I'm thinking about it, in that chemistry class was about 60 kids, right? That's a high school. That's one of the most biggest high schools in Detroit. And we feed those schools, right? And so when we talk about admin, right? I'm in a 700 school district. We have 1 admin for the whole school.
Mm-hmm.
We have no counselors, okay? Charter schools, the school sizes are a little bit more smaller, but when we think about DPSCD, they get really scary to the point where I won't go to I won't teach at Detroit Public Schools because I can't handle those class sizes. So when we talk about understanding the need for class sizes, we want smaller class sizes. We want scholars that need those extra attention, the equity push. They need that, right? So in the summer school, how many kids I have? 9 kids. That's paradise. I love that. Every teacher will prefer that, right? And so when we talk about the need for smaller class sizes, there's a huge need. But taking admin from that, that's going to hurt even more because I depend on Ms. House. But Ms. House has the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th floor to also attend to. And like you said, it's 7 days a week. Ms. House had a day off. I was like, Ms. House, I know you wanted your day off, right? She's like, yeah, Miss Null, I miss my babies, but you know, I need my time, right? And so decreasing class size, yes, we need that. But taking that from admin, we don't need that. So like what Kelly said, I concur.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Thank you, Mr. Nelum. Ms. Snyder, to you,
Now, if I get my first bite at the apple now, do I get a second bite at the apple?
if you would like. You
Okay,
bet.
I just want to make sure that
Go ahead.
that's not off the table. There are so many moving parts to this resolution, and some of them are conflating the purpose of it. So I just want to state first that I definitely support smaller class sizes. I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's healthcare and nurse-to-patient ratios, yield better patient outcomes. Teacher-to-student ratios yield better student outcomes, and that's what we need to see in literacy. So I think that, some of the things that you guys were talking about is almost district level. Maybe some districts could, scale back on administration and see a teacher-to-student ratio improve and therefore outcomes improve. So I think that level of solution is at the district level. There is a paragraph on the second page, and to speak to Tom's, amendment. The problem with bringing in the budget as it relates to exactly how we will improve the teacher-to-student ratio with this resolution is just not something we control. It's not something we can totally call out right now in terms of what it would look like to solve that. The paragraph says that the House of Representatives have proposed cutting more than $5 billion, but they've been very vocal in the fact that this is not a budget proposal. It's a stopgap budget proposal, which directly relates to how they're choosing to negotiate. And then when you look at the Senate recommendations, they're very specific about allocating a line item to this particular issue of having smaller class sizes. And to my knowledge, there is, the House isn't, opposed to increasing per pupil funding. So whether or not a local school district would use per pupil funding to accomplish smaller class sizes and in combination with whatever works for them administratively, I don't know what that looks like from one local school district to the next, but I certainly support smaller class sizes. We're one of the few states that has not actually made a statement of what that looks like. I don't think it comes down to politics. I do worry whether or not Speaker Matt is surrounding himself with the expertise and wisdom to be able to negotiate the line items from the Senate recommendations, exactly what is valuable in those recommendations and how to negotiate through them. So right now, what it seems like is we have this stopgap proposal, which isn't an actual proposal of cutting from the school aid fund, but also maybe a per pupil increase, and then a Senate recommendation with a number of line items that focus on specific things. I think the only thing we can do here today is to say we support this particular issue, and we want to see it addressed in the upcoming budget.
Right. But what's on the table is Mr. McMillan's motion to
Understood.
amend. So where are you with respect to his motion to amend?
I support the amendment, but we don't have the answers to whether or not that particular amendment is helpful at this point in time, based on where the budget negotiations are at. So I can't, we're just making statements about money that we don't have all the information of and won't know the outcome of the budget until we do.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had some discussion. This is a motion to amend by Mr. McMillan. Mr. McMillan, you get your last bite of the apple.
Just because.
And then Ms. Evans is going to read the motion.
Just point of clarification. I'm not talking about administration at a school. Obviously, the vast majority of administrative costs are at the district level. And so that's the area where there's savings. And, I just pulled up the Mackinac Center has, they show from 2003-4 to 2023-24, total revenues have gone up 194%, when you include federal, but 108% from all sources. I'm sorry, 108% from all sources, from 18 billion to 30 billion. Direct instruction went from 9 to 13, so 79% increase. And support services, non-instruction, went up from 6 to 10, so 99%. So certainly from that increase is significant, significantly more in the non-teacher, non-instruction areas. So that kind of helps bolster my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Evans, if you would please read Mr. McMillan's motion to amend, and Mr. McMillan, if you will, please confirm its accuracy.
I emailed it, but okay.
So I just have it cleaned up in paragraph form without.
Okay.
So I have it, be it therefore resolved, the State Board of Education urges school districts to reduce administrative costs to lower class sizes. So you have
To
this,
ensure schools be able to lower class sizes.
I see.
Yeah. Okay, to ensure
Okay.
schools be able to lower class sizes.
Yeah,
To
that's,
ensure.
well,
Yep,
that's right.
No, I'm just.
To ensure schools be able
Of
to lower
course.
class
Mhm.
sizes.
Schools.
We've got a motion, we've got a second, we've had discussion. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Of course. Lipton.
No.
McMillan.
Yes.
Pritchett.
No.
Pugh. Robinson.
No.
Snyder.
Yes.
And Tilly.
Okay, so we're back to the base motion of Dr. Robinson. Is there any more discussion on the base motion? Hearing and seeing none, if we could please have a roll call vote on
Well,
Dr. Robinson.
I'm sorry,
Please, please,
I would
yes.
just say that certainly, you know, I'm supportive in general of the idea of lower class sizes. I mean, that there could be a lot in that, but in general, but certainly I believe that the money's already there and that we can lower class sizes significantly by just reducing administrative costs. So I don't think we need to take any more money out of the taxpayers' pockets to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the good of the group? Hearing and seeing none, we could have a roll call vote on Dr. Robinson's motion.
Yes. Lipton.
Yes.
McMillan.
No.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Pugh. Robinson.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, Board. Ms. Tilly, you have a motion. If you'd please move it.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move the resolution requesting the establishment of policies that register and protect children on the autism spectrum.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second from Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Tilly, back to you to read it into the record.
Whereas the Michigan State Board of Education is committed to ensuring the safety, dignity, and well-being of all children in Michigan, including those with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and whereas autism is a developmental condition that may affect communication, behavior, and social interaction, and children with autism may respond differently during stressful or unfamiliar situations, including interactions with law enforcement. And whereas, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, approximately 1 in 36 children aged 8 years in the United States were identified with ASD in 2020, highlighting the growing prevalence of autism among children. And whereas there have been growing concerns nationwide and in Michigan about the safety of children with autism during encounters with law enforcement officers due to a lack of awareness, training, and appropriate identification measures. And whereas early identification of a child's diagnosis and needs can lead to better, safer, and more informed interactions with public safety personnel, including during emergency situations, traffic stops, or when a child with autism elopes and is reported missing. And whereas many families and advocates have called for voluntary registration systems or alert programs that would allow parents or guardians to proactively provide important information about their child's diagnosis and specific needs to local law enforcement agencies. And whereas several states and municipalities across the country have implemented successful voluntary registration, training, and identification programs that have improved safety outcomes for individuals with autism, and whereas providing appropriate training to law enforcement on autism spectrum disorder and creating a confidential voluntary system to identify and protect children with autism can foster trust and protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education urges the Michigan legislature to enact legislation that establishes a voluntary autism safety registration system, allowing parents and guardians to confidentially register children with autism with local law enforcement agencies, provides protection for the confidentiality and security of medical and personal information, requires comprehensive autism awareness and de-escalation training for all law enforcement officers and emergency responders, and establishes a law enforcement notification system enabling dispatchers to alert responding officers when a registered individual with autism resides at the address of a service call. This system could be modeled after existing frameworks like the Automated Regional Justice Information System, Officer Notification System, which allows for real-time alerts to officers about specific individuals or locations, and ensures equitable and non-discriminatory application of these policies in accordance with civil rights and disability laws. Be it further resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education urges law enforcement agencies across the state to collaborate with autism advocacy organizations, educators, and families to create and implement policies and programs that foster positive relationships with the autism community. Adopt community-based practices that support inclusive, informed, and compassionate policing of individuals with disabilities. Develop clear protocols for emergency situations such as missing autistic children or incidents involving sensory sensitivities or communication barriers. Be it finally resolved that copies of this resolution be transmitted to the Governor of Michigan, the Michigan Legislature, the Michigan Department of State Police, local law enforcement agencies, and autism advocacy organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. That was a lot. We appreciate your sharing. We also appreciate the sharing of our parent during public comment. We have a motion. We have a second. Motion by Ms. Tilley, second by Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Tilley has read her motion into the record. Any discussion, Ms. Tilley, additionally?
Yes, you all know that I'm context rich. I want to add, and I think Stephanie did a really great job conveying some of the things that she's been through. And I think it's a great example of what our parents are going through. I want to add that Stephanie mentioned her son was 2 years old when he was diagnosed. Before that, Stephanie lived a very active life. I knew her before she got married and before she had her son. She was very active in the community. After the diagnosis, Stephanie's life totally changed. I didn't see Stephanie for years. And it's just, she's hyper-focused about, as she should be, caring for her son. But I just want to make a note of that because our parents are going through so much. Our caregivers are going through so much, and they definitely need community support. And sometimes those are the things that we don't think about, the day-to-day life of a parent or caregiver that has a child with a disability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Other board members' reflections? Ms. Snyder.
Is there anything of this nature that is currently implemented, or would this be a brand-new concept in Michigan?
The city of Sterling Heights, ironically, within the last 2 weeks, I sent the article to Tiffany and I think to Dr. Rice also. has just implemented it. Now, I don't know whether it's anywhere else in Michigan, but she had sent the resolution, and then I happened to notice that their city council approved it, and so they're implementing it with law enforcement in Sterling Heights.
Okay. Very good.
Dr. Pugh, please. Yeah.
In response to Board Member Snyder, and one of the pieces that I wanted to look up, I remember Xavier DeGroat, the Xavier DeGroat Foundation was advocating for this, and I remember going to something at with legislators and police, and I can't remember where he is in the legislation. I thought it had moved, but I have not had a chance to research that. So, and unfortunately, my service isn't that great right there. So you recall that? Yeah.
Please, Mr. McGraw.
So is this advocating the first where resolved, is this advocating for state registration system?
No, that local agencies have that available for parents.
Okay, so the state legislature would require local agencies to do this?
To offer it. So parents don't have to opt in.
No, but the locals would be required to have it.
Yes, yes.
So all the individual city and county, township police, law enforcement agencies would be required to have it, and I'm sure the state would have to fund it, because you can't have it unfunded, so that's fine. So, okay, so there'd be a ton of different data. I'm just worried, and that sounds good, because I was worried about big statewide database, just one more list that kids get on, and so I'm just wondering if you're advocating, and I guess it's in here, a bunch of local databases. I'm good with that. I just wasn't sure about, because I don't, it says, and I appreciate that it's going to ensure confidentiality, but I mean, I don't know, I've heard with AI, they're figuring out ways to make sure that they can get into any system. I don't know, I wonder about confidentiality. So is this one more thing that a kid's going to get tagged with that,
And this is definitely why we want it to be optional. This is not something that would be mandatory for families. As she stated, that she's dealing with it and her neighbor is dealing with it, and other parents are dealing with the person eloping. So if they're running off, what she did not mention was, she mentioned her neighbor, but she didn't mention that there's a pond nearby. And so the neighbor's child likes to go get in the pond. So we want to be very careful, very sensitive, and we want to make sure that police officers know if they encounter a child or a young person or an adult with autism, and like the one in Idaho, he was having a mental health issue at the moment. He was nonverbal, he had a knife, and immediately the police officer's response was to shoot multiple times. So it's a way for, as you know, I'm a person that promotes community policing as well. It's a way for the officers in the community to have that relationship with the parents, if the parents or caregivers want that relationship. But it's totally for them to opt in, not mandatory.
So I guess I'm just wondering if you would be open to, for number one in the first paragraph, establishes, instead of a voluntary autism safety registration system, establishes voluntary local autism safety registration systems with an S in all law enforcement, or I don't know if that's enough, or in all law enforcement agencies, or something that, I don't know, I mean, I can go with this. When I first read it, I thought it was just one big state database. And so I like what you're saying. I'm just not sure. I mean, I don't know, if it comes up and they write a bill, then we can testify and make sure that it's not a state database, but a bunch of local databases. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the premise is definitely for And we put in to send to local law enforcement agencies, but the premise is like, Sterling Heights just implemented the system for it to be implemented on local levels.
It just says establishes a law enforcement notification system. So and that was in number 4. And so I guess as long as we've discussed it and you've clarified what you are intending, I guess it's probably good enough for me.
And then the legislature would go in more in depth as well.
Right, I don't want
with
to
the law.
spend too much time wordsmithing it.
May get worse.
It would take a while. I think we understand it.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley, Mr. McMillan. Dr. Pugh, to you.
I just wanted to mention that I did find where it was something that was signed into law. I'm trying to get the date. That was 2020. And it was a special, okay. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed into law in June bipartisan legislation that DeGroat has sought to allow state driver's license and license plate to indicate to law enforcement that an individual has autism or a communication impediment. The new designation embedded within data stored on the ID card should alert police that when they pull over someone with autism, the sensory overload of the lights and sirens may have tipped off a meltdown. So there's that. We can look at that deeper, but I think that yours is broader, but just so we know that that is available. And I know he was doing a lot of advocacy still around this legislation.
To be clear, it's in the same spirit, which is what I think you're saying.
Yes.
And this idea was a bipartisanly supported idea in 2020. Bless you. I think that there's a value to this. Family may decide not to register their child or their adult family member, which is fine.
Yeah.
May not be necessary.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Anything else for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice. Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Evans, if we could have a roll call vote.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes. Motion carries.
Unanimously. Thank you very much, Board. Board, we are to board member comments. Anybody for board member comments? Ms. Snyder.
To piggyback onto the last discussion, I actually had a special education parent reach out to me multiple times the last couple months. Apparently, there's a study being done through Wayne State that we are releasing, or I shouldn't say we as a board or not, but our names are on this paperwork that I was given. And it's special education students that their information is being given to Wayne State to do a special education parent satisfaction survey of some kind. And this particular person is very upset that their child's information was given to Wayne State, that they did not give permission for that information to be given to them, and that they don't want to fill out the survey. So I don't know where we stand on that as a department, but I'm not sure if there's a way to communicate directly with special education parents before we give their children's information to higher education institutions in relationship to requests for survey. Clearly, just based on our previous discussion, personal data, so it can strike a chord, and people feel like they want to have their privacy protected to some degree. So I feel like I'll give you her information, but it would be great to know what we do with that. Is that typical of our policy to?
I think we've spoken with this parent.
Okay.
But happy to get the information, happy to confirm that.
Okay.
And also happy to share more with the board about the circumstances of the survey. Survey results would not be specific to an individual child. There would be no individual
Identifying.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, we would be precluded by federal law from identifying the child. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Heflin.
Please.
You know, the discussion about the library funding, I don't know that I would have had an opportunity to clarify, but obviously, when we were talking about an average, I mentioned an average of $11,000 that would have had to have been spent if we remove the federal funding. And the comment was by Mr. Chairman that 11,000 could be a lot for a library that only gets 100,000 bucks. Well, you know, I was talking about averages. So the one large library brought in 10 million. The second one, DeWitt, was 1 million. So, you know, I would imagine that you know, they'd have 10 times. So the 10 million would have to spend 20 grand. The 1 million, the DeWitt would spend 2,000. If you had $100,000 total budget, it'd cost you 200 bucks. So it was not, you know, it was an average. And I thought that was clear, but I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. That's what we were talking about, was averages of a library.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice? No? Dr. Pugh?
Do we have information for next Tuesday?
We'll be sharing more in board brief, but we will be in Mount Pleasant. And we've already shared venue. Time is same bat time, different bat channel.
It's public.
It is public.
Oh, yeah.
And it's strictly going to be, the agenda is just the superintendent search?
It's going to be the superintendent search firm part of the superintendent search, yes. And then, you know, kind of an extension off of that. That's the morning, and then the afternoon, lunch and a tour with members of CMTED, the Council for Michigan Tribal Education Directors. Yeah, please.
Dr. Rice, to Board Member McMillan's question, and this is something that we do every year. It just so happens that we had the announcement.
Right, no, yeah.
So we'll use that time. And then one thing that I did not say during the superintendent search update is that we will be looking at more additional dates, I would imagine, as we have in the past.
Yeah.
So we'll need to add more dates to our calendar, I'm pretty sure.
So thank you for mentioning the work session, May 20th, Tuesday. And then 2 regular meetings, June 10th and August 12th, both at 9:30 a.m. If there are any topics board members would like to recommend for future meeting agendas, please notify Ms. Evans or me. It is 4:09. Board, please enjoy your additional minute. Take care. Thank you.